Even today, at 65 years old, I can close my eyes and still smell the strong scent of fuel mixed with the heavy aroma of rain-soaked earth. I can hear, clear as ever, the helicopter blades slicing through the air, a sound that seems to have etched itself into my mind, like a scar I'll never be rid of. I remember that dark, gray morning perfectly. The first time I set foot in Vietnam, I was just 18. I knew nothing about life, and even less about death. The moment my boots sank into the muddy ground, my breath caught in my throat. It was as if my body instinctively knew I wasn't supposed to be there. The air was thick, suffocating, heavy with fear, tension, and something else, something I couldn't yet explain. Around me, the faces of my fellow soldiers were tense and hollow. Few words were spoken, but the silence between us said enough. None of us were truly ready for what awaited. The jungle ahead loomed like a sleeping beast, hiding dangers that went beyond enemy soldiers. I felt a constant chill, an icy sensation crawling up my spine every time I stared into that dense, impenetrable, mysterious forest. It didn't take long for me to realize that war wasn't just fought between men. There was something else, something dark, something unnatural about that place. On my first night, as I tried to sleep, I heard sounds coming from the darkness around us. Light footsteps, incomprehensible whispers, and a distant, eerie wailing that seemed to echo softly through the trees. My heart pounded. My hands trembled as I clutched my rifle against my chest, and a thought crept into my mind, one I was too afraid to say out loud. Was I losing my mind? Or was there truly something wrong with that place? And you? Have you ever felt that something was off in a place you didn't know, even if you couldn't explain why? Leave a comment and share your experience. In those first days, I kept trying to convince myself that it was all just paranoia. After all, this was war. My mind was exhausted, always on high alert, expecting the worst at any moment. But soon, I realized it wasn't just that. There was something else. Something ancient, silent, and deeply unsettling lurking in those places, hidden behind the dense veil of the jungle. One time, we were patrolling an area that had supposedly been abandoned for weeks. It was a simple village, completely destroyed by combat. The houses were nothing but charred wooden ruins, and a heavy silence hung over the place. The only sound we could hear was the faint crackling of dying embers. As we walked cautiously through the wreckage, I felt a strange pressure in my chest, like something unseen was watching us. Then, suddenly, a desperate scream tore through the air, coming from a half-destroyed house. We all ran toward the sound, rifles ready, adrenaline surging through our veins. But when we got there was no one. Absolutely no one. Just strange markings on the walls. Scribbles that looked like letters, but none we could understand. My entire body trembled, cold sweat running down my face. I could feel something breathing behind me, but when I turned around, there was only emptiness. That same night, as we rested in our makeshift camp, I woke up with a suffocating sensation, like invisible hands were tightening around my throat. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. When I finally forced my eyes open, I swear I saw a dark figure standing right in front of me, watching in silence. It had no face, just a shifting, shadowy silhouette, towering and menacing. And then, within seconds, it vanished into the darkness, leaving me paralyzed with fear and questioning my own sanity. Even now, I wonder, were those events just the hallucinations of a mind broken by war? Or was there something else, something beyond human understanding, hiding in that cursed jungle? From that moment on, I could no longer clearly distinguish what was real and what was just a product of my mind, warped by constant stress. Everyone around me was shaken too, but no one spoke of these things out loud. It was as if acknowledging them would make everything even more terrifying, more real. One night, We were sent to guard a small strategic bridge in an area surrounded by dense vegetation. It was supposed to be a simple, routine position, but the silence in that place was profound, heavy, almost solid. No animals, no insects, just the distant murmur of flowing water. My senses were on edge, my skin prickling at every slight rustle of the leaves. As the night wore on, a thick mist began rising slowly from the river, creeping over everything around us. It was so dense that it became hard to even see the faces of my closest companions. The cold that settled in was unnatural, far beyond what should have been possible in that humid, suffocating climate. My breath came in visible puffs, and no matter how much I rubbed my hands together, the chill wouldn't leave my bones. And then I heard them, whispers drifting through the mist, low, unintelligible, moving ever closer. I looked around, searching for my comrades, but they were frozen in place, motionless, paralyzed by the same fear gripping me. Something deep inside told me those voices did not belong to enemy soldiers. They were older, more desperate. It was as if hundreds of lost souls were moving around us, trapped forever in that cursed place. I remember the overwhelming feeling of helplessness. The purest terror seizing my body, leaving me unable to react. The voices never stopped. They circled us, murmuring through the fog, whispering things I couldn't understand. And when dawn finally broke and the mist slowly faded, we found nothing. No footprints, no signs of life, nothing to prove what we had experienced. Only our haunted stares met, sharing the unspoken certainty that we had witnessed something horrifyingly real. After that night at the bridge, I began to realize that something inside me had changed forever. I was more alert, yes, but not just enemy soldiers. Every shadow, every rustle in the jungle made me hold my breath. I felt as though I had crossed an invisible threshold, as if I had awakened something dark and buried deep within myself. At one point, we were relocated to an advanced base, hidden deep in the forest. It was a small, isolated camp, surrounded by hastily dug trenches and makeshift fences. At night, the only light came from scattered lanterns along the perimeter, casting flickering shadows that swayed with the movement of the trees. It was suffocating, because every shadow seemed to take on a life of its own, twisting into strange and menacing shapes. On my first night there, I was assigned to patrol the eastern perimeter, alone. The silence was unbearable, pressing against me like a heavy weight. I felt an immense tension settling on my shoulders, my pulse hammering as I scanned my surroundings again and again, convinced that unseen eyes were watching me from the darkness. And then I saw it, a faint, flickering light emerged beyond the fence, deep in the jungle's gloom. At first, I thought it was someone patrolling with a lantern, but as I watched, I realized it didn't move like a normal light. It drifted slowly, erratically, without direction, as if floating on its own. My heart pounded as I took a hesitant step closer. A voice inside my head screamed at me to turn back, but my body refused. I was drawn to it, pulled forward by something I couldn't explain. The closer I got, the stronger the sensation became, an overwhelming feeling that I was surrounded by something unseen. A suffocating chill wrapped around me, squeezing my lungs, making it harder to breathe. Then, clear as day, I heard it, a hoarse, weary whisper, right at my ear, my name. I spun around, panic surging through my veins. But there was nothing but the vast, consuming blackness of the jungle staring back at me. I ran back to my post, shaking, unable to rationalize what had just happened. I knew only one thing. I had come face to face with something ancient, something beyond understanding. And even now, all these years later, it still lingers in my memory. Time moved slowly in Vietnam, and each passing day seemed to carry another piece of the dark mystery I was desperately trying to understand. The things that happened were far greater than a war between men. Something hidden, Something almost supernatural lurked in every corner of that jungle. Something that constantly tested us, breaking our courage, our sanity, little by little, on one particular mission. We were trapped for 5 days in open field, surrounded only by towering trees and dense vegetation. The relentless rain pounded the ground, forming deep pools of mud around us. We slept little, ate even less. We were weak, exhausted, vulnerable, exposed to something I could feel creeping closer, like a predator stalking its prey. On the third night of that agonizing wait, I noticed strange movements among the trees. Dark figures moved silently around our makeshift camp. They weren't enemy soldiers. This was something else. Something that seemed to glide rather than walk. Once again, the cold wrapped around me, tightening its grip on my chest, choking my voice before I could even try to alert my comrades. My eyes followed the figures as they moved slowly, deliberately, circling us. They had no defined faces, just deep shadows, darker than the night itself. And from them emanated a profound sadness, a suffering so intense I could almost feel it pressing against my skin. Without realizing why, I felt tears rolling down my face. It wasn't fear. It was something else, something deeper, as if, for that brief moment, I could feel the weight of their pain. One of my comrades saw them too. His gaze was locked on a distant point, his face frozen in pure terror. But he said nothing. He didn't move. He just stood there, trapped in the same silent fear, sharing the same unshakable certainty that we were witnessing something far beyond our understanding. When dawn finally broke, the camp was untouched. No physical evidence remained of what we'd seen. But on every face, there was a deep, unmistakable mark. We knew that experience would never leave us, that those silent figures would remain with us, always watching, always waiting. When I finally returned home, I realized that leaving Vietnam didn't mean leaving it all behind. I carried memories no one could erase, scars etched deep into my mind. Time passed, I grew older, but those shadows never left me. Today, at 65 years old, I still wake up drenched in sweat, feeling that invisible presence watching me in the darkness of my room. War leaves marks that everyone can see, scars, wounds, missing limbs. But it also leaves invisible wounds, far deeper and more painful. These are the marks we carry for a lifetime, memories of things no one should ever witness. Today, I know there are forces beyond our understanding, and Vietnam was merely the stage where they revealed themselves to me. For over 40 years, I tried to forget, tried to rationalize everything I saw. Many told me it was just trauma, post-traumatic stress, the nightmares that every soldier carries after war. And yes, I do carry those traumas, but I know there's more to it than that. Vietnam showed me the darkest side of humanity, but it also revealed that we are not the only ones dwelling in the shadows. I face it all with as much strength as I can muster, because it's the only way I know how to move forward. I often ask myself why I was chosen to see those things. Maybe it's my purpose to warn others that there are mysteries hidden within our reality, waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves. Today, I live in isolation, speaking little about what happened, but I feel the need to tell these stories, to share what I've kept buried for decades. The weight of carrying these secrets alone has become unbearable. Vietnam never left me, and I don't think it ever will. When I look in the mirror, I see more than a retired soldier. I see a man marked by the unexplainable, a survivor of something that transcends any human war. And I know that as long as I live, these memories will remain with me, watching in silence, patiently waiting in the shadows, just as they have since that first day in the jungle.